Don't complicate it. Satsang, 21st of August, 2016. Good day, dear friends. I'm glad to welcome everyone gathered here. My name is Sergey. The topic of our meeting, our conversation, is everything related to spiritual awakening, realization, enlightenment, many beautiful words, regarding practices and the very term path. Hello, thank you for coming. The format of our conversation is Satsang, that is, question and answer. Feel free to ask any questions related to this topic. I will answer them. There is no strict format. Ask anything that interests you on this subject. Who has defined what the path is for themselves and why it is needed? Maybe some people are quite satisfied with the material world.
Tell us about yourself, about your path, your understanding of how the whole space of the path is arranged.
Well, the path was quite long. It lasted about 18 years. Most of the path was traveled without a living master at all. It was an experimental path, a path of trial and error. A lot was done, many practices were tried. It can all be summed up in one phrase. There was simply a very strong desire. I didn't exactly know what I wanted. Probably, it could be formulated as the knowledge of the subtle world, something like that at the beginning. Then, when I started reading masters, I learned from hearsay what liberation is, that which mystics of all times have sought, and this completely captivated me. Other aspects, some esoteric, occult, or whatever, fell away. It was precisely the theme of liberation. I understood it in my own way. That is, I did not know exactly where I was going or who I was. You see, this is what I constantly repeat at meetings. The greatest trap for the seeker is this. A certain image is created of what you must be. Here, liberated, enlightened. Since the personality has no experience of impersonal existence, no experience of that unity, a certain image is created. And the seeker, all this happens on the level of thinking, goes toward this image to correspond to it. This is the read experience of someone else's awakening, a master's. Or you simply look at a master and imitation begins, but all this is not it. That is, the idea that you must become something for liberation. This is not true at all. You need to look from a slightly different angle. Who is this seeker? What is it at all? And what is really being sought? It is not an object, not a status. It should not be sought outside, somewhere externally. It is, on the contrary, an introversion. It is a leap inward. It is the path into oneself. In all cases, enlightenment, awakening have never been found as something external. It is not an achievement. It is, on the contrary, an understanding of nature. It is the destruction of all identifications that were instilled as social conditioning from childhood, that I am this body, that someone lives in the body, and so on. That is basically the whole path. And when this whole topic was seen through, the path itself seemed absurd, because who was going where? Understand? The body can go to the store or across the street. But who walked for 18 years? Some fictional character at the level of thought, supposedly going somewhere, toward some abstraction. Do you understand? And this is actually very funny. All these efforts, practices, all this doing, for the sake of becoming some kind of, it's unclear what kind. But something was done. Done. With a sports approach. Every day. Meditation sessions, twice a day, Qigong exercises, reading masters. Something didn't come together. But all of this, no, It all remained at the level of thinking. Here lies the reason why the search drags on. People spend 15, 20 years searching, and they are looking for what they already have in their pocket, what they essentially already are. This is the biggest curiosity of the spiritual search, that it happens entirely on the level of thought. Some insights, states, medals are appropriated. I am a tough seeker. But in reality, nothing happens. It's all a state of mind. One must look in a completely different direction. To turn around, that is exactly what the path of self-inquiry offered. That is what Ramana Maharshi offered. Atma Vichara, the inquiry. Who am I? It is akin to Jnana Yoga, the self-inquiry taught by Nisargadatta. It is all introversion. It is the opposite path. Inward, inward, deep inside. At what age did you realize that you exist? These kinds of questions stump you. And you see, the very idea of I is not based on anything, absolutely on nothing. It is supported by nothing. Nobody simply looks in this direction. The intellect is directed outward. It is constant expansion. It is objectification, turning everything into objects, contexts, concepts, descriptions, turning everything seen and heard into knowledge, into the known. This is what the mind is busy with. But when it turns inward, that is the search that can end with awakening from all this mental fragmentation. Because all divisions have been and remain at the level of the mind. True, real division has never happened. The same power operates through all that is manifested. The same source manifests itself exactly like this.
What is the problem of a person?
It is simply faith, certainty accepted as a fact, as an a priori truth, that the observer is located somewhere inside the body. Then the world is perceived as something external, separate. This is the primary division. There is the observer, and there is the observed. But this is only conceptual, because the body is also perceived, like other bodies, as an object, like the floor, like one of the contexts, one of the images. But who perceives the body? Who witnesses everything? Everything manifested, sounds, phenomena, sensations, everything toward that direction. And it doesn't matter what you call it. These are just terms found in books. That will be your answer. Possibly even a wordless answer. But it will be the answer, the very one that mystics of all times sought. And there is nothing paradoxical or mystical about it. Absolutely nothing. There is no exclusivity here. It is quite natural. When consciousness? But even this, again, is not the achievement of the character. Even this path is not appropriated. It is also impersonal consciousness, which simply is. It strives toward its source, that's all. This happens. No one chose it. No one can choose. To ignite with the search, yes, that can be described as an interest that arises. A person becomes distracted from the material and asks, what is the meaning of this complicated movie? What is the point? How is it all arranged? What is it made of? What was before birth? What will be after? Are these stories about reincarnation true? How is it all really? People write about this in so many different ways. In the East, there were people called karmas who sought through matter, through money, through possessions. No one is worse, no one is better. It is just different orientations, different focuses of people. And there were the jnanas, those who asked questions. Why exactly this way? What is the meaning in this? Where does it all come from? In a few words, nothing is chosen. You could just say that, and that's all. And then, for some time, you suffer, if it really ignited well inside. Look how many paths there are nowadays, how many strategies. This topic was never particularly forbidden, but it also didn't really interest many people. And now, so many different traditions have opened up. Many, many things. Even traditional religions, which once at their core carried teachings of non-duality, over time through interpretations moved away from that understanding. But there are also non-dual teachings that still carry this sane impulse. An impulse directed inward, towards understanding. They are focused on the search for that very non-duality. Who am I? This is the same as to find God. Whoever sought God, answer the question, who am I? And it will be the very same answer, silent. There are different traditions. Sufism, Dzogchen, Kashmir Shaivism, Taoism, some schools of Buddhism, although some of them have ultimately become ritualistic and religious. But something alive, that is what is important. This is exactly what true traditions are aimed at contemplation of one's true nature. Masters have always existed in different traditions. Feel free to ask any questions from any tradition. In some traditions, it is associated with, you see, I will explain why. For example, a person goes through certain practices, yes, as a seeker, and their disidentification is connected with energetic processes. Energy rising, kundalini, shaktipat, many energetic flows. In that tradition, it is described exactly like that. But in other traditions, there is no such term as kundalini at all. But that does not mean that there is a different transformation. Essentially, it all comes down to one thing. What is enlightenment? It is simply the loss of self-identification. Nothing more. The understanding that there is no separate I. No separate I that has some other origin, like there is an I, and there is a world. And these are something different. You see, the idea of separation simply disappears. If there is some I, then it is necessarily an idea of control, an idea of will, of choice. And it is precisely this idea of control. That is the cause of suffering. When it disappears, that is enlightenment. The understanding that there is no one to be enlightened, no individual entity to whom it applies. And this does not concern the body. You see, it is not the flesh that becomes enlightened. It is not an X-ray. One can say that so-called enlightened ones do not differ from ordinary people, except by the limits of the mind. And the boundaries of the mind, they are only conceptual. What can limit consciousness? Only the play of individuality. The assumption, I am the body. That's all. Here are your boundaries. They are purely mental. When they fall away, everything starts to collapse. Like cards. In the East, this is called skandhas, mechanisms that stop being appropriated. Feelings, thinking. There comes an understanding that thinking is a spontaneous process. It's just a vibration of air, a sound made by the mouth, but behind it, no one stands. It is consciousness speaking as well. You see, it is consciousness talking to itself, listening to itself, talking to itself. At both ends of the stick, there is no one. Whoever understands this, directly through their own experience, can be said to be awakened. They see that there is one unified space, that it is the same consciousness that speaks, listens, perceives, and everything happens this way. As beautifully said in Vedanta, God walks alone, talking to himself about himself, because there is no one else and nothing else. Everything is God. That's a brief explanation. What kinds of transformations happen? If you read Jiddu Krishnamurti, he described very serious changes, which were reflected even at the level of the body. Signs on the body itself, activation of chakras. He experienced electrical discharges, loss of memory, recognizing objects anew. He recalled the taste of juice, names of colors. How deep the transformation was. Honestly, I have not seen such metamorphoses in any other masters. For those who practice energetic methods, it is often associated with Kundalini. It manifests just like that, through energy. But again, this is just in one of the traditions. In others, even the number of chakras differs. In some there are 7, in others 9, in some 4. In Vedanta, one number, in yoga, another, in Tibet, different again. You see? So it all depends on the tradition. But all of this is conceptual, symbolic explanation. It's just a framework, a base to start learning from. But this too is a crutch that ultimately must be discarded. Therefore, I wouldn't advise anyone to cling to any specific structure, like there must be exactly this many chakras, or, for example, Kundalini must necessarily be present. A person sits and waits because somewhere they read in descriptions that it must be like this. Temperature rises, heels burn, smoke comes out of the ears, Kundalini rises, the body loses weight. There is a collection of descriptions, many stories of awakened masters, especially yogis, with very vivid descriptions, energies, heat, vibrations, light, altered body weight, and so on. But there were completely different cases, too. For example, the Buddha said, "Under the Bodhi tree, nothing happened." The chain of events simply ended. This is just looking at the topic. Everything that happens, only on the level of thoughts. That's all. What paths? This is the end of all events. Do you understand? Everything that is described, it's the mind describing. It is constantly inventorying, describing events, cause and effect relationships. It sews it all together with white threads. What path? Who is going where? Thought moves to another thought, a model is created. And that's it. And each master describes it differently. For example, Ramesh Balsekar described it very simply. One day I noticed that there are no contradictions in the world. The world lost its contradictions. There was simply nothing to add or subtract. Everything is as it is. This is loss of boundaries, absence of judgment, absence of division. So this state can be anything. You see, look, if you take the path of yoga, I'm not a yogi to judge such things, but generally, in the tradition of yoga, the body is not an object of healthcare. The body is prepared as a stand for a mirror. That is, the mind must be prepared so that it can reflect this awakened space. The body is like a platform on which this mirror will arise, which fills nothing but simply reflects. An empty mirror. This is about consciousness as a mirror. For this, in yoga, the body is prepared. Practices, locks, bandhas, pranayamas, they are largely aimed at stopping the breath, slowing down thinking. You understand, these are pauses in thinking. That is, when there is thinking, it is already involvement. It is always from the idea of I. And in such a state, it is hard to simply see the space in which all this is happening. Almost no chance. That's why, for example, in yoga, they go through the body. The same can be said about Qigong masters. I talked with one. His sensations were on the level of the body. Everything connected with everything. An infinite interconnection. Bundles of sensations. That's exactly how it goes. They work through the body, through bodily practices, very differently. There are many paths. I don't remember the exact numbers, but some sources talk about several thousand paths to achieve liberation. There are many traditions because, essentially, every master just recorded their experience, left some hint, an algorithm. Here, see, this worked for me. But no one, you understand, left an exact recipe. Otherwise, it would be easy to just stamp them out. Still, somehow, but on your own. Osho said, and it stuck with me a lot. Walking the path of Buddha, Krishna, or Christ, you will not become Buddha, Krishna, or Christ. Everyone has their own path, their unique yoga. Yoga here means practice, path. That is absolutely true. Buddha himself said, "If you see me, kill me. Don't follow me. Take the knot, not me." This is what turns people into bookworms, just repeating someone else's experience without trying it on themselves. But you have to walk it yourself. When you see for yourself, when it is truly yours, then you won't lose it. It becomes yours forever. You won't lose it. You won't squander it, as they say. What path? I can't even advise on that. I myself walked the path of self-inquiry. I pushed myself into dark retreats. But in my case, in Sergei's case, they didn't work. Maybe I didn't stay long enough. But now I understand what happens in a dark retreat. For example, 72 hours, this is a Buddhist practice. 3 full days in complete darkness. Black on black. When nothing comes from outside, the mind simply has nothing to inventory. No light, no food, nothing. And then the mind begins to rummage through cached memories. Journeys begin, to school, to university, to the army. Everything gets reviewed. Such a deep re-examination. But even this ends. If you sit well, this famous turning point comes when the mind turns back on itself and begins to contemplate its emptiness. The idea of inside and outside disappears. There is no inside or outside. There is simply perception. There are images there, and images here, and it's all the same. And this turning point, it shatters everything to pieces, breaking all divisions. There was a very simple example given by many masters. They said, "We can do it right now, look." And next comes a practice of observation. I can continue if you want. Close your eyes. I'm addressing everyone here. Close your eyes and replay in your inner screen the image you just saw. Open your eyes. Compare. Close them again. Replay. Answer a simple question. Are you in the room, or is the room in your head? Which image is more real? If you still think you are in the room, then answer this. Of what material are dreams made? Where is that space? You see, the appearance of objects is no different. There is no inside or outside. There is no observer who lives inside the body. The body is also observed. By whom? Feelings are observed. By whom? It's some kind of residue that can't be found, but which registers everything that happens. That is your nature. Because if something is found, then it is also perceived. That means it is not it. That's why it is said, "See the seer." But who is the seer? It cannot be found as an object. Look, in many religions, under various guises, the idea of immortality is offered, mostly after death, and for some good deeds. It's like a kind of exchange with God, right? You behave well, and something will be given to you. Business. A deal. God. As a separate figure, sometimes angry, sometimes rewarding. But what does the teaching of Advaita say? It simply says, there is no death, because there was no birth. Simply, birth never happened, and therefore there can be no death. Where does all this come from? The whole world of processes, all that is manifested, has a beginning and an end. Any object has its lifespan, its term. Even the strongest rock will turn to dust after a few hundred years. The search for that which is not subject to movement, that is the search inward. The source of all that is manifested does not move. It is unmanifest, and everything manifested has its logical conclusion. Any process flashes and fades away. In simple terms, birth, death, birth, death. But there is that to which these terms cannot apply, that which is not a process, that which is unmanifested. That is the true nature, non-dual, the emptiness of emptiness, the one that was sought. That's why all the great Jnanis said, "I was never born and never died." And this is not a metaphor. It is absolutely clear and understandable because you are not the body. Leave the body alone. It does not need any idea of I. It is fine as it is. This bio-robot is absolutely perfect. It is woven from social and genetic programs, a whole system, reflexes, impulses, tasks, and it does not need the idea of I, nor even the idea of no I. With a very military, sports-like approach, I practiced everything I could get my hands on. Well, I liked it. Many practices, unclear why, but if it's in the literature, then it must be done. And this only strengthened the doer. You see? This, Sergey, the practitioner. Instead of turning around and looking, who is this Sergey anyway? What is this? Is there any willpower there? Or is it just motivation, which also is not chosen? Bang! It's switched on, and you go. Practice twice a day, for years. So what I propose is to look from the other end. Not just keep doing more practices, given at retreats, seminars, or somewhere else. What worked for you? Self-inquiry. Who am I? Look there. Look there. To understand. What does I am mean? What am I? The body. It exists by itself. Thousands of cells die. Thousands of cells are born. There is no Sergey in this. The stomach works by itself. The blood circulates by itself. Who experiences feelings? Are they chosen? They are simply experienced. The whole spectrum. Like this, like that, and like that. And this remainder that observes all this cannot be found. In the East, this is described like this. The intellect creates concepts, and the intellect destroys them as well. This is what is called jnana, teaching, knowledge. And this, the absolute foundation, the unmanifest, which exists, but is given only through manifestations. This is called vijnana. This is unconditional knowledge. This is not about awakening, but about final realization. but nothing can be said about it. Basically, it is an experience that cannot be transmitted. Only indirect pointers, hints. It is the state of empty mind, the mind turned onto itself, observing its own emptiness. One could say so, although the word I is already inappropriate here. You could accuse me of imprecision, but let it be so. What seems real? Look closely, actually. Even the scientific explanation of perception is only an abstraction. Look, a photon of light reflects off an object, enters the eye, passes through the lens, focuses on the retina, is converted into an electrical impulse, goes through neurons to the occipital part of the brain, and only there is decoded as an image. Do you understand? There is not a single object that is reflected directly into the head. Inside, there is simply no place for this world. It's all a biochemical reaction. So, what is more real? This interpretation, or what you call imagination? Scientists still throw up their hands when asked, how does the impulse from the eardrum become the perception of sound? So, where is the sound? Where is the song? In the tape recorder? In the ear? It's just an interpretation of a signal. Here is the impulse, and it causes a sensation. A dream. Look at a dream. Everything there is real. The ground is solid. Dogs bite. People talk. Until you wake up, everything is quite real. They hear birds singing, smell the pine scent, hear the crunch of twigs underfoot. And everything is absolutely real for them. Everything is interpretation. And only understanding this causes resistance. Emptiness originally manifests in any way. Appearance is an eternal principle. Even scientists called it the Big Bang, as if emptiness exploded into manifestations. But the essence of all that is manifested has not changed. It is still the same emptiness, just appearing like this. Of course, it is a beautiful concept. One can talk about it for a long time. Do you have any questions? Or maybe someone has practiced something? Sometimes people say, the body must become enlightened with such certainty. And I ask, what is wrong with the body? Or they say, the mind must become enlightened. But what is wrong with the mind? Well, it's unclear, right? How is all this? How to even formulate enlightenment? What happens to the body after that? Look, perception exists. The body is perceived. Okay, let's do another exercise. Something drew me toward a retreat today very strongly. Close your eyes. Focus. Clearly, at the level of the solar plexus. Then shift your attention up, above the head, a bit back. How is the body perceived? You don't see pictures. I'm asking you, as a set of sensations, what do you specifically feel right now? Look, don't open your eyes. Ask yourself, what is in this space? What else can be said about it? Right now, in this moment, an eternal draft. Sounds, voice, sensations of the body. Some wind on the face. A draft from the window. Look, mutual sensations. The floor under the feet is felt. Here, the buttocks, right? In this space, who perceives the body? Who witnesses everything, everything, everything? Speech, some thoughts, slow thinking that is going on. Where do the thoughts come from? And where do they go? Just see this. Just look closely. There is space in which all this happens. Sum of sensations. Here you have the body. But do you feel the whole body? Every cell of the surface? Of course. No. You feel the buttocks, maybe, the straight back, because it's hard to sit straight. But that's all. No more. What about the back of the head? What about the skin around the eyes? There is a single space in which all this exists. Is there division there? Perception of sounds, listening, inner images, thoughts, drowsy attention, a background of feelings. All of this is in one field. If you look closely, there are some feelings: calm, light joy, fatigue, or sadness. How do you know what is being experienced? And by whom? Through this organism, the body and mind. All this flows in one unified space. Is there division in this? This is exactly how everything is perceived. Simply, don't complicate it. Many say, will I be able to feel through all the bodies? And I ask, who is this abstract I that wants to feel itself through other bodies? What kind of unit is it that something is wrong with? That is searching for something. The understanding is very simple. Division never happened. Difference. Yes, objects have forms and functions, but the same force acts through everything. This is not mystical. It is very simple. One could say, it is simply the absence of anxiety. Anxiety comes from the idea of control. Women know this well. As soon as a wife wants to control her husband, it's constant stress and trouble. It's the same here. A person lives in constant tension, trying to control something. They want to twist something out of life, but life flows as it wills. And the one who tries to control is abstract, does not exist as a separate entity. And all of this is one continuous flow. All these bodies, all these processes are embedded in a single space. They function within it, but the same force operates through all of it. Look, here is a hand. The fingers, different, but they interact with each other in any way. But all of this, one foundation. No problem. It's all just a game. And you realize that this game is not yours, and it is not you who plays it. This is what is called the selfhood. Everything happens by itself. Do you understand? This is effortlessness. What would you like next? I don't know. Well, you see, this is just the nature of the intellect. Next, next, next. That's what I understood, but beyond that, there are no bonuses. You see, this is not forward movement. It is the opposite, a stop. Everything moves by itself. This is the observation of the functioning of selfhood. It all unfolds in its own chaotic, incomprehensible way. There is perception. There is effortlessness, meaning there is no one sitting in the position of the observer. Eyes open. Perception flows. Thoughts flow. I'm talking about waking up in the morning. Is there any reason for worry? That's why enlightenment is associated with a state of balanced effortlessness, when there is no separation, no fears, no suffering, when everything happens without violence to your plans. Is it your shortcoming? Has something been accomplished? Another reason. Since you are the body, you are mortal. So many such appeals. Do you understand what is being taken away? What remains? But nothing remains. That remainder cannot be found. It doesn't even need to be named. And in that lies the ease. But do you actually need to do anything? Does someone need to control a child? Does someone need something? Of course no. Look, I tell you once again, the body has a bunch of programs like in a computer: maternal instinct, self-preservation instinct, reproductive instinct, very strong programs. They manifest through this organism, the body and the mind. That's all. You, as a personality, have no possibility to change anything. This program works by itself. Understand this. To go to the bathroom, you don't need to turn on your brain. The bladder contracts, and you go. That's a program. The same with hunger. Suddenly you go to the store, to the cafe, or open the fridge. The program works, and that's it. It turns out that consciousness simply observes this program. Consciousness reproduces itself, aware of itself. That's its quality. And it's not against anything. This is not a super intellect. You, as a personality, that's not personality. Do you understand? There is no quality of against. It's simply the quality to self-reproduce, self-awareness in manifestations. It's a quality as natural as flowing water. Don't look for meaning in this. It simply is. This is the primal principle of the universe. Just so. There is no against or for there. It's not some bearded uncle who decides something. It's just a process that started spontaneously, without any premises or causes. Just the void exploded. And that's it. And this continues, even after the death of any of these bodies, because every body is a finite process. The universe will continue unfolding further and further into new universes. Self-consciousness, in it, there is no against or for, no meaning of progress or goal, there simply is. But the mind craves meanings, goals. That's its disease, a habit of thinking. Modern humans live from one goal to another, and peace only visits them in dreams. An eternal carrot is always ahead. It's constant tension, and happiness is only for moments when the intended is fulfilled, until the next desire arises. The music plays briefly, hop, and then the next one again. All life, a person is rushing. Tension from one goal to another, from goal to goal. I'll raise children. Then I'll focus on myself. The children grew up. Now I have to work. Studied at the university. Finished. Grandchildren came. Now I take care of the grandchildren. An endless cycle. But in fact, you don't need to take care of grandchildren or children. You need to take care of your health and your attitude to life. It's all about the attitude. Do you understand what goals are? I really like the example of Alexander the Great. He conquered 3 worlds, then said, "Life is like sand. You can't hold on to anything. Bury me, so that 2 hands hang out of the coffin. I brought nothing with me." He understood something. Why cling? For what? Some want to carry their personality, possessions, to confirm the idea, I am. I have something. The greatest failure is when something is taken away and it becomes not mine, as if anything really belongs to anyone. Whoever understands that everything here is rented stops clinging to the fog. Everything is rented. The body is just a term. Seek the eternal, the unchanging. Is something being realized now? Or does a deeper understanding come? Maybe some kind of insight? If insights bother me, I try to get rid of them. I write them down on social media, just so I don't linger on them. Understanding, if you expect supernatural revelations, it's all nonsense. What do you need to know and why? Knowledge is symbolic descriptions. Anyone can say anything, spin any abstraction around one object. These are concepts, assumptions. People get awards for this. They described something. In reality, knowledge is needed to control something, to wait for insights. Do you understand? If Sergey is busy talking, Then to explain something, he might write down something valuable. That's it, short and clear. An interesting metaphor. Maybe it will help. You see, there's an interest in talking about this topic. That's all. What kind of cosmic revelations do we need? God forbid. I'm not a scientist. There is, for example, the tradition of the 18 Siddhas. They also came to the realization of the unity of the self, understood who they were. But life went on, right? So what did they do next? They wrote dozens of treatises about medicine, the light body, immortality, and a whole lot more. And they understood all this much earlier. Their consciousness was the same as yours. So what? Why did they develop this light body? Why did they write poems about immortality? Why didn't they strive for something else? There was something more. Of course, there was. Understand, they also came to see that there are no concepts, that the I disappeared. But you assume there is a choice? There is none, no author, being manifests through the person. So he writes poems, treatises about the body, medicine, whatever. Admit it, everyone is busy with their own business, and there is no choice in that. Even the worst example, no one chooses to become a drug addict or to end up in prison. But it happens. If someone thinks they chose their path, that's an illusion. Start small. And your thoughts? Who produces them? Who is this thinker? He is also invented, like an idea. Anything can manifest, whether playing the balalaika or growing seaweed. What difference does it make? Treatises. These are creative works passing through this organism of body and mind, that's all. And here's what I mean. There is interest, and a lot changes just by itself. For example, tastes in food change, priorities change. Sports, where you had a long experience, suddenly lose interest. Priorities just shift, that's all. Or for example, the interest in talking disappears. And nothing, you just sit at home drinking tea with your wife. That's how it happens. By the way, about treatises on immortality. The Taoist tradition, for example, how comprehensive it was. And how many recipes and pills for immortality they had. And where is all that now? Why does no one want to write anymore? Everyone's lazy. They should carve it on rocks, in hieroglyphs. That would be a real treatise. Days were made from some external components. Every 5 years or so, some plants, minerals, and all this was melted down inside into these pills. So, everyone was enlightened, yet they still engaged in this. Some kind of concern remained. You see, maybe they just didn't know where to go next. Alchemy, transformation, they were heading somewhere. But let's not be nostalgic about the Mesozoic era. Everything changes. That's normal. Look at how much has disappeared, how much new has appeared. Even in recent decades, mobile phones, computers. We didn't know about that before. I absolutely don't want to judge what's worse or better. Everyone has their own interest, and maybe through you some topic will come alive again. For example, the light body. Is there a motive to strive for it? I clearly understand. During life, the body dissolves into the 5 primary elements spoken of in teachings. They say only hair and teeth remain. But who in their right mind would want to strive for the body to dry up and lie somewhere, only to be shown at festivals later? That's not a priority. Of course, there are traditions, for example in Tibet, where they insert a straw into the crown for transition, if the person hasn't achieved something, and many other things. But why try to cover all this? It's enough to acknowledge that the idea of connectedness is absent. Everyone has their own. It's like money. Some people are always worried about it, but in reality, it doesn't matter what to do. That's one thing, and worry is quite another. What's next? What's the big meaning? What's the benefit to people? No offense, but 90% of people aren't really interested in this. It's a rather small circle, those interested. Only a few with burning eyes really hold on to this topic. Take the example of Bodhidharma, who came with Buddha's teaching to China. He sat meditating facing the wall, and many students came to him, but he answered no one. Until one came and cut off his own arm with a sword, saying, "If you don't turn around, I will cut off my neck and head." Then Bodhidharma turned around. This is the direct living transmission of Zen. No teachings, no words, only eye to eye. He was the second armless patriarch. Someone asked him, "I cannot calm the mind. Help me understand." "Show me the mind." Searching, he could not find it. So, if you were to write treatises knowing that no one would follow them, or poems that no one would read, why do it? A very interesting observation. And indeed, this often happens. Meeting a teacher or mentor is like a subtle resonance, a barely perceptible flow that cannot be planned or predicted. You didn't even know he existed, and the person who introduced you to him didn't know him personally either. Just a chance crossing of threads in the network or in life. Indirect communication. And suddenly, exactly that moment arises when the needed response appears. It is very valuable when a person doesn't just answer, but precisely sees where your thought stumbles, where the misalignment is. That is mastery. Not scattering words, but clearly grasping the essence, pointing out the gaps. The flow develops precisely through questions. You ask, he answers. If a person is silent, it's not a refusal, but an answer to silence. A state when there is nothing more to add yet. That too is part of the dialogue. Sangha, community, is a living process that develops depending on each one's requests. When there is a true request, the conversation unfolds into the most unexpected and deep streams. If not, it flows differently, more simply, maybe psychologically. You rightly notice that everything depends on the quality of the question and the readiness to listen. That is the real magic of teaching and communication. If you want, I can help formulate these thoughts for some text or speech to convey exactly this subtlety and importance of the moment. Very well noticed. All this story with intellect and knowledge often ends in realizing that all this burden sometimes only gets in the way. We feed the mind all day, all life, filling it up, and then suddenly realize that we need to be able to detach and let go of it all. The point about children and school, exactly. School and education are part of a larger social script that sets certain boundaries and rules. Of course, formally, one needs to complete school, acquire skills, gain social experience, learn to communicate, to adapt. But in reality, as you said, a lot of the knowledge from universities ends up just sitting on a shelf. Unused in life. Society is built on the idea of individuality, on the idea of progress and constant improvement. But this progress often leads to comfort, and people become softer, more passive, seeking more and more convenience. The internet, gadgets, everything is being automated to reduce our effort. This is natural and expected. Your question, whether to push your child to be a straight A student, to insist or to relax, is very important and complex. I would say balance is key. It's necessary to give space for growth, to respect her unique path, but at the same time offer support and guidance when needed. If the child hasn't yet formed her own inner motivation, she still listens to you, and so your care is essential. Life truly pulses, everything changes, and you yourself change, responding to her behavior, her grades. Plans and advice are important, but they shouldn't become a heavy burden. Everything should flow naturally, without unnecessary pressure. It's very important not to overthink, not to try to control everything, because that, in itself, creates tension and conflict. Just live through these moments, observe the changes, support your child and yourself. If you like, I can help you shape this into a piece of advice or a supportive message for yourself or someone else. Teaching or spiritual transmission is not something that can simply be handed over to a newborn child, whether it's enlightenment or advanced practices. The personality must first mature, walk its path, develop necessary skills, withstand the game of life, learn to stand up for oneself, take responsibility. That's the law of this theater we call society. No one can just sit and wait to be given everything. One must learn to walk, speak, work, resist, express oneself. Look at the Dalai Lama. He wasn't only taught spiritually, but also history, politics, the ability to make decisions, to negotiate, to protect his people. That's holistic education. No area is unnecessary because everything is interconnected. Enlightenment is not an escape from life, but a full participation in it, a complete understanding of it. About impulses and inner pulls, that's an important point. Life flows through us on its own, unpredictably, sometimes strangely. We don't need to try to control and plan every detail. That is the very source of suffering. When life goes according to your plan, all is well. But as soon as something deviates, tension and anxiety arise. And once again, this is not a call to become a vegetable or to do nothing. Desires, ambitions, anger, all of it arises on its own, as impulses. What's important is to realize that there is no personal doer behind it. Everything simply happens through you. Strive, achieve, pursue, but don't claim it as yours. Don't become a prisoner of your desires and emotions. Live like children. That's an incredible piece of advice. Childlike spontaneity, lightness, and freedom of perception. This is what helps us stay in the present, free from obsessive goals that never end. And yes, here's the good news. You are not the body. The body is simply an instrument of perception, while you are the space in which all of this takes place. Birth, death, joy, sorrow, drama. If you stop identifying with the role and the character playing in this film, peace and freedom can arise. Your insight about awareness and the loss of self, it's excellent. At first, there appears to be a position of the observer, where the body and mind seem to separate from you. It seems like I disappear, but in reality what remains is a certain witnessing consciousness that simply observes. These states of absence of me, they are recorded by that same awareness. And in this, there's no anxiety, just pure presence. And this is the key moment. Who is witnessing? And really, who? If witnessing is happening, that means somewhere the idea of control still exists. I am watching. I am remembering. I am registering this. But if that fixation disappears, if the whole idea of control vanishes, then there's no one who observes, no one who records. What you're describing, the state in which the I disappears, is truly rare and profound. It happens, for example, in long-distance running, like with athletes, where thinking shuts off and the body simply moves on its own. That's when this happens. There is no I, no inner controller, just movement, just observation. Athletes say, I win when I'm not there. It's pure mechanics, spontaneity, flow. You also made a great observation about lucid dreams, that they can't be taken as an ultimate achievement, because just like in waking life, there are various levels of involvement. Sometimes you are truly aware in the dream, and sometimes you are simply immersed in the happenings without awareness. So awareness isn't guaranteed. It too comes and goes, like a current, like a pulse. It's natural, whether in wakefulness, in dreams, or during prolonged physical activity. One can enter a state where the I fixation disappears. In those moments, there is no one to fix anything, no subject. This idea we have, I observe, I witness, is just one form of consciousness, one step along the way. But it's not absolute. This whole game is exactly about that. Gradually shifting attention, reducing control, letting go of fixation, and seeing that there is no separate I who is fixing or observing anything. You said, when the brackets close, when there is no coming back, then there is no fixation either. And this is already deeper than can be expressed in words. That is true liberation from the idea of I. Look, if a person is becoming more calm, not clinging to anything, when there are no strong events as such, even the dreams become calm. If there's no mental hustle during the day, there will be no carryover into sleep, no continuation. There's a direct connection to awareness. To which self? To no one. To emptiness. Even emptiness is just a label, a word. Once again, I say, the awareness that the body is lying in bed and that this is a dream, that awareness cannot be called the self. You understand what I mean? I'm talking about dreams. Now this dream, it was very interesting, especially after the sorry. Absolutely. See, the borderline state, the entry into sleep, is usually like this. Consciousness dims, it's like a collapse, a narrowing into a single point, a threshold, an entry into another dream. The word as a vibration, some sort of context, and then, with a small delay, the object appears. The context gives rise to the visible form. And that's when the understanding came, how consciousness works. You see, a certain context, a word, is the object. The object, in a direct sense, is the word, something that we have named, described. Mind. Take away all the names from everything you see right now. What does a small child with a clean, fresh mind perceive? Light, vibration, but no names. Context is the word, and the word becomes the image. Context, and then, boom, the picture, just like that. This is knowledge. The knowledge that is innate to humans, to intellect. So what do we see? It turns out that everything is appearances of a fragmented mind. Context. What is not thought? What is beyond context? There is no such thing. Everything is from thought, from context. This whole world is a house of cards built from thought, from layer upon layer of context. This endless fracturing. We named something a cup, a table, the sky, and thus divided them, as in the old parable. We called the sky, sky, the earth, earth, and separated them forever. That's how division happens. Now, if something is unclear, we need to find out. Interest. A beautiful girl walks by, gets behind the wheel, arches her neck. That's a different kind of interest. When it comes to awareness, just observe. People are simply not used to being here. They're either digging through the past or imagining the future, already projecting from a platform. It's all from the past, from what they already know, constantly not present. Someone is walking around sitting at a satsang, but in fact, he's already thinking about frying potato or brewing coffee at home. He's mentally not here. That's what I'm talking about. So, be aware really means be in this moment where you actually are. You're with us. You're listening to this session. Every be aware is just another way of saying be here and now. That's what it's about. Stop wandering in the kingdom of the mind. Become aware of this very moment, this eternal, fresh, flowing moment of perception. Nisargadatta had a very different meaning in mind. He said that awareness, when reflected in matter, is what we call consciousness. Originally, what he called awareness is that which does not yet know itself. Awareness is potentiality. He spoke of consciousness as something in complete stillness, non-existent, like pure potential, the absolute. Right now, there's one big problem, in understanding. Because there's a lot of terminology that floats above, and people throw it around, but each one perceives it differently. What's lacking is a return. Back to point one. People often think of awareness as just attention, being focused in the here and now. But that's not true awareness. That's simply the mind's capacity to concentrate and be one-pointed. If that's the case, then we have another conceptual explanation, the one given by Sri Ramana Maharshi. It's important to give subtle clarification of what is meant verbally, because everyone has read thousands of books about God, the higher self, and then it all becomes a jumble of personal ideas and confusion. Like one woman said to me, "I get confused. When I want to make a decision, is it my higher self talking or my lower self?" Can you imagine? She's placed herself in a third position and doesn't know whom to listen to, the higher or the lower self. This kind of layered esoteric terminology, that's why I try not to juggle with those sorts of vague or debatable terms. If someone asks, I can refer to who described it how, if I know and still remember. In fact, all of Advaita can be explained without this terminology. The terms themselves are just terms. Clinging to terms or arguing on forums and websites dedicated to Advaita is just people fighting with paper swords over who is more correct in terminology. There's no point in that. For me, an awakened master is someone who can explain Advaita to a 10-year-old child without any terms. That's the level. And spinning Sanskrit terms and concepts, who needs that? I once encountered psychology where, to understand anything, you first have to buy a dictionary of terms. Who needs that? Beauty is in simplicity. Truth has never been complicated. It cannot be described with words. No term can reflect it. I already hinted, what is not thought, what is not perceived, what cannot be simply described as context. Is there a main factor for reading to spark passion? If you're not controlling anything, why would you need a factor? If nothing is being chosen, do you need any factor at all? Some say, you have to really want the master, strongly strive. I know those who sought nothing, and suddenly it happened. There are people who weren't searching, just drinking soda, and bam, it happened. They even hide it for a couple of years, thinking they've lost it, that they're not like everyone else. There are no real boundaries. If there were some single factor, masters would have already created an algorithm. Follow this factor. But each master in their tradition described their own pointers, their own paths. So why does understanding or recognition not become final? If recognition happened completely, terms wouldn't be needed. Later, you might say, it was Satya, truth, or something else. But does that make it easier than what was seen? It depends on what happens during the state. Why do people experience regressions? If a person didn't practice and some state occurred, the subject and objects, the boundaries, did not dissolve, recognition didn't happen. Then it ends with people asking in correspondence, what was that? It passed, and the personality functions again. If recognition is deep, like, you are not the body, this is all at the level of thought, personality. Personality is just thoughts and reactions. Thoughts are habits, the habit of thinking, nothing more. There's no serious attachment to it, no identification. It's the habit of thinking, like the habit of swearing, doesn't mean it's really true. Some people, after a state, even with a lot of reading, understand no, but still fall back into personality. Their problem. I fell back into personality again. Who fell where? Who regressed where? The idea regressed back into an idea. You hold a Skype session, lead a person to realization. They see. This changes everything. 2 weeks pass. Regression. Where am I now? Who am I? It's all an idea. Just an idea. The idea of authorship. The idea of personality. The person says, what now? How to live? I say, what was, that still is, what's different? That's how it is. You see, life was tossing around anyhow. It just carried the idea of tension and control. But it tossed around exactly the same way, only everyone clings to the idea of control. Afraid of something, afraid of being nobody. How can you be nobody? So much energy goes into the image, into maintaining what isn't, this bubble of non-existence. Plus defense, because others might push you around. The ego has many functions. The drive to outsmart everyone, to fight for a place in the sun. There's so much nonsense, really. So get rid of it wholesale. I've encountered this in individual sessions. Just see who is afraid. Who is afraid of this idea of personality? Some kind of anchor, a platform is needed. When I do sessions on Skype, it's like an up-to-date form of self-inquiry, a clearing. When you start to pull the stool out from under the idea, don't cling to anything, it's just an idea, people react differently. Even men. Oh, my head hurts. My heart hurts. Let's not finish today. It's a many years old habit of thinking exactly like that. When you take away what's familiar, you need courage to go all the way. Who are you? Just a report of what dies and what can die. Where does the wind blow from? Where do the feet grow? Who dies? This character, it bursts. It's unfamiliar. If you do practices, events become important, emotions change. But everything depends on everything. If you want to produce something, to connect something, you can. Through practices, you can supposedly gain peace, but something will come, and all the peace will vanish. You need to be that peace. In that peace, any states can manifest. Sadness, grief, anger, so what? This is not I, this is not mine. They pass like waves or birds flying by. States come and go, like happy today, sad tomorrow. You need to understand, you are the original peace. So much has already been said about eternity, peace, emptiness. These are just hints. They have no name. Call it whatever you want: non-dual nature, original Advaita. These are just words, wrappers. It all happens in some kind of space. You are not a character in a movie. You are the space in which everything happens. The feeling of solid separation is very distracting. I am solid. The person nearby is different. What confuses? Is it the body that tenses? Or is it the wish for softness in other bodies? How to realize unity? The mistake is to think you want to perceive yourself through some particular body. It is the understanding that all manifested things have one source. You will not perceive yourself through one body alone. When consciousness is disidentified, you realize yourself through everything at once. You are all objects, but none of them is you. This is the true nature, the source. It is present in the manifestations. All this is simply a matter of mental understanding. All is manifested. It is the functioning of one force. Through body and mind, it is the same consciousness. This consciousness plays the fool, the wise man, the drunkard, the bandit. Do you understand?